Siamo onorati di avere con noi come moderatrice Margaret.
We are honored to have Margaret Sidscombe here as chairman of this next session. She was with us back in 2012. She will take us in the world of brain. She is a neuropsychologist. She is a teacher at the Tilburg University of Neuropsychology, promoting well-being in Tilburg in the Netherlands. And she is also the author of many books. Her research deals with the relationship between brain and behavior. Understanding the way our brain works will give us a key to understand human behaviors. Neuroplasticity enables us to mold our life and our world. We cannot change, we can improve at any given time. So let's hear Margaret Sidscombe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that I'm invited here by Patrizio Paulettu to talk a little bit about the brain, the present, the future, and some other things. And I called my presentation In Esse et in Fieri, which means being and becoming. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that, because all our life, all of us are about being and becoming. The first thing that I want to show to you is this very famous fresco. And this fresco is called, years after it was made, The Creation of Adam. And we are in Rome here, and it's probably the most famous fresco in Rome. And everybody thinks, or we are taught, that what you see here is actually God who gives life to Adam. But at the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you another hypothesis about what the meaning of this painting might be. Well, they asked me to tell a little bit about my own personal being and becoming. And in order to do so, I got a few pictures of when I was little, very little. I wanted to be a prima ballerina. Well, that didn't work out. So I became a professor. And my work, my livings, I traveled a lot all over the world, very basic. I lived in the States, I lived in Detroit. And during all these times when I was growing up and becoming what I am today, of course I had a lot of pleasant experiences, but I also had a lot of bad experience. While traveling and also in Detroit, I experienced a lot of violence, I saw a lot of racism, I saw a lot of poverty, I saw a lot of injustice. And also during my work these days, I work a lot with patients with cancer, for example. I work a lot with people in poverty. I experience a lot of despair. And the questions that were asked to me today was, how do I conquer present challenges? How do I find the drive to go on? Why do I always feel hope? I'm asked that a lot also in interviews. You always look hopeful. Why do you always feel hope? And I thought about this question because, to be honest, before this presentation, I didn't think about it a lot. I just experienced hope, right? And I came to some insights. And let me get you through those insights. The first thing I noticed is a paradox in almost every experience that I had. On the one hand, I felt fear and anger and frustration and insecurity and confusion and unsafety and loneliness, etc., when I experienced these really horrible things. But then, after I experienced those emotions, almost immediately, sometimes it took a little bit longer than other times, I felt determination. I felt hope, I felt love, I felt compassion, forgiveness, strength, also weakness, which can be a strength. And I felt some feeling of control getting over me. This realization brought me to, we do not have to be enclosed in pain, in powerless, right? Maybe in the beginning when you experience bad things, you feel enclosed in pain and powerlessness. But then, most of the time, by the support of others, you can overcome that, and also by the support of yourself. That led to a second insight, a second realization, and that is that pain and adversities many times are the start of something. The start in my development, the start in my actions, the start of hope, the start of new goals, the start of new networks between people. And therefore, I came to the conclusion that they are not in contrast with compassion, hope, and love. Actually, the mixture of both seems to be means to an end, means to development. They seem to be a vehicle of change. For the third realization, I have to talk a little bit about the brain. Everybody who's listening probably knows that the brain is executing your feelings, your emotions, your doings, your development. But what most people do not know, that this arrow actually has 2 points. So it goes from brain to behavior, but it's also true that everything that you do, everything you feel, everything you think, all actions you undertake, and every experience that you have, directly influence the brain. It changes the brain immediately. Here you see a drawing of neurons, and these neurons have axons and dendrites, and they connect with each other, and where they connect, it's the synapse, and there information from one cell is given to another cell. And the moment as we speak, your brain is changing. Not only your brain is changing, my brain is changing too. This whole interaction that we are having today will make us never the same again. You started out this morning literally with a certain kind of brain, and because of the experience of today and all the knowledge that you acquired and all the feelings that you had while listening, it's changing your brain. Your brain is already different than from this morning. We call that neuroplasticity. And because of neuroplasticity, we can always develop. And that gives me a third realization. It means that when I'm in the world and I'm experiencing that world, that this changes my inside world. And when my inside world is changed, my experiences change, my skills change, my feelings change, and because of that, the outer world is changing. This is a very, very important realization, because it means that inner world and outer world actually fall together. What becomes my inner world becomes the outer world. And what becomes the outer world becomes my inner world. And not only for me, what I'm doing in the outside world is changing the brains of everybody that encounter me. So if I summarize it, inner and outer world fall together. It's a constant dynamic of synchronization that determines our development and the development of our world. And you have to realize that without this synchronization, we would be stuck. We would not develop. The world would not develop. But then I came to another realization. I asked myself, okay, if we have all this potential to change, right, then why is the world still in the state that it's in? Why is it infested with many societal, economical, moral, and environmental problems? Why? And when I was thinking about that, I realized that through the years, we as human beings developed a lot in the field of economics and health and education and socially, but on a lot of other aspects, we did not put a lot of conscious effort in that development. And I have to tell you something else about neuroplasticity, because neuroplasticity sounds really nice, right? Your brain changes and it changes the outside world. But neuroplasticity in itself has no direction. It can be positive, it can be negative, right? If you expose yourself to negative things, to things that bring you down, or to information that is not valuable, or to food that is not really nourishing you, or to social relations that are not nourishing at all, it will drag you down in a downward spiral. On the other hand, The brain just adapts to what you expose yourself to. So if you expose yourself to positive things, to development, to real information, real nourishment, whether in food or socially or otherwise, your brain develops in such a way that you can give that back. And then we become in a positive spiral. So there are many things that we did not develop. And then what did we not develop? Where should we put more effort in order to develop? Well, those are aspects like compassion, forgiveness, trust, kindness. We have to have a balance between cognition and emotion. We cannot be only feelings or only thoughts. There have to be a balance. We have to have a balance in short-term and long-term decision-making, between egoistic, selfish behavior and pro-social behavior. And when we develop these skills, when we develop this balance, we can become human beings in balance with our body and soul. Of course, our body needs also short-term things, right? We need to nourish ourselves too. We heard it many times today. But if we only do that and not think about the future and not think about others, there's no balance. There needs to be a balance there. We need to be in balance with ourselves, with others, with the environment. We need to be in balance with the present and the future. And I learned today also with the past, the present, and the future. Now let's go back to where I started. Let's go back to the creation of Adam. In 1919, there was a Dr. Franklin Meshberger, and he suddenly got a huge insight. He looked at the creation of Adam, and he realized that the clock of God actually was a human brain. If you look at that picture very closely, you see all kinds of structures that you also see in the human brain. And God in this picture, in this fresco, is like his arm is around Sophia, and Sophia is a metaphor for the wisdom of God. But God is doing more. God is in the prefrontal lobe, which we can say is more about executive functions, more about cognition, etc. But God's body is also in the emotional parts of the brain. And God is touching, almost touching Adam, like a synapse between cells. They don't actually touch each other. There's a little space between them. And you can see the almost touching as that. And God's arm is protruding through the frontal lobe with his body in the emotional parts of the brain. And he's not giving Adam life. Adam is already much alive, right? Meshberger said his eyes are wide open. He's not giving life. Now I think that God is endowing Adam here, endowing with all the capabilities that makes us really human, not only for ourselves, not only for the others, but for all of us and all our environment. Here you see again the schematic summary of the brain that God's cloak is and God itself. And what I would like to say to you, that God in this fresco endows Adam with the tools to become. Not only to be, but to become. To envision a world that we want to live in. To envision ourselves how we want to be. To envision how our children could be. This would give an enormous amount of hope to all of us and a drive to develop and to create a future for all of us to live in. Being and becoming. We can be like that too. I would like to say, be touched and endowed. Touch and endow others. Be and become. In esse et in firi. Thank you very much.